What? Damn, bro. Keith Frank being your boy, bud.
I'm just
My nose look like Ric Flair's nose?
We are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance.
Don't look at the camera. What? I'm getting flustered.
You're gonna get one of these, bud.
Welcome to the National Wrestling Alliance podcast, episode number 31. AWA, we hit Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm Wes, and today Jesse is unavailable. He's on top secret overseas international assignment. We're going to look at a great card in the usual way of the National Wrestling Clippings Alliance. But first of all, I'd like to thank all the new group members on our 5 Facebook groups. I'd like to thank all the new subscribers. We're growing immensely, and it's very, very nice. We're up to a gazillion views on our podcasts. Please consider sharing all our episodes. And I'm sorry I'm reading this. I'm usually not Jesse. Jesse usually does this, and he's got it down pat. Our Facebook pages, the content, thank for everybody for sharing. The new Facebook pages with Ric Flair and the BC page are growing every day, which is really, really nice. I just want to quickly talk about our last episode with Paige Von Hess. That was really interesting to talk to her. She was a great guest, and I was so happy to help her in her quest. I'm so happy in getting her late father's wrestling career together. So we've been working on that for years and years, sending information back and forth with her, whether he was known as Big Bill Terry or the evil German Kurt Von Hess. So we're quickly moving forward in time to 1980 and Winnipeg, Manitoba. That's my new home province, which is still winter today, kind of weird as we tape this. And we hit the wrestling history just about 43 years ago. The AWA was the biggest show in town here. And today we're lucky to have a new co-host filling in for Jesse, and he's going to add his expertise on this episode. That's our good friend, Andy The Taxman. Welcome, Andy. How's it going?
Pretty good, although we may have to X-nade the expertise if you will, but I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
Yeah, so just quickly, Andy, you want to tell us about Grappling with Canada, anything you're going on there?
Sure. So Grappling with Canada, for those unfamiliar with the program, it's supposed to be a monthly program, though I've been lax a little bit here for various reasons. Monthly look at some various individuals from Canadian professional wrestling history. Season 1 was a full season, including individuals such as Stu Hart, Rhonda Singh, Abdul the Butcher, Gene Kiniski, and Jack Taylor, many more. Season 2 was kind of following an Unsolved Mysteries series as we looked to solve some unsolved Canadian professional wrestling mysteries, where we looked at some cases such as George Gordienko and the communist conspiracy that kept him from winning the NWA championship. We looked at the murder/suicide of Don Eagle, explored that in depth. We looked at what happened with the Tolos brothers and their split. And that season was kind of truncated by my political aspirations here in Winnipeg. And we're back with season 3. We just released an episode the other month on a little bit of a disturbing episode, but we covered the disturbing and very dark story of Bruiser Bob Sweetan. And very shortly, we'll be releasing our newest episode covering all things Great Antonio. So looking forward to big things in season 3. And like I said, I'm really, really pleased to be here today to talk some Winnipeg wrestling, which I actually don't get to do very often on my program.
Cool. Yeah. And you delve so much into the history of things that 1980 isn't really history to some of the things you delve into. I didn't know you were going to do anything on the Great Antonio, which is one of my big interests over the years.
Very cool. That one's a spoiler. So there's a potential that your episode may be out before mine, because I've been working on this one way too long, but okay. I was very fortunate. I was able to get in touch with some very interesting archives out of Montreal, which I've been poring over and trying to add them into the episode. So every time I think I'm done, I'm not, and there's something else to put in there. So I'm hopefully at the tail end. So we'll see which one of our episodes gets or gets released first, if you will.
And as it goes with all professional wrestling history, there's always something else.
Absolutely.
Yes. So we're going to set the scene right now. What we usually do is Jenny's going to add a drum roll for us, and we talk briefly about what's going on in the wrestling situation at this present time. So National Wrestling Alliance heavyweight champion was Harley Race. WWF champion was Bob Backlund. And of course, AWA champion was this man right here, Mr. Verne Gagne. And let's get right into it and ring the bell for the first match. After, of course, we hear from our sponsor, Grand River Tea. Grand River Tea is a provider of premium loose leaf tea with many different blends and options. To be sure to check out their website at grandrivertea.ca. Don't forget to help us out and use the code NWCA at checkout to receive a 15% discount. Great tea, great wrestling history, and a help out to us here at the National Wrestling Clippings Alliance. I got a question for you, Andy. So, did you attend shows in Winnipeg?
I've been to multiple shows over the years in Winnipeg. I only ever saw one at the Old Barn, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight. That would have been a WWF event in, I'm going to say, early 90s.
Okay.
And then I saw one in 2000. Oh, what would that have been? One of the early Raws when Jericho was on top and or on his way to the top, I should say.
Yeah.
I should preface. So then, I've seen Raw a couple of times since it's been through here. I didn't see AEW when it was in town. It's not really my cup of tea, so there's that. But the local scene is something I'm really having fun with lately. A lot of CWE shows, for example.
Yeah. And I just heard the other day that Raw's coming back in, I think, August.
Yeah, I've already been roped into tickets for that one. So
I was talking to some people today, and they said we should all wear NWCA T-shirts and try to get on camera. And I was like, yeah, okay. It's not. I would like to go in a group with a bunch of people, but I'm not overly fussy on going myself because it just doesn't hold the same appeal anymore, right?
I'm in a group with a bunch of people, so maybe we should get ourselves some of those NWCA shirts and rock those on the big screen. Hopefully, get on there. I think we're pretty close, actually. I think we're right around ringside, if I'm not mistaken. So
nice.
Maybe we'll see if I can swing something. Nice.
So we're gonna run down the card here now, and I've got we're gonna start off with the first match. Steve Olszewski, or his name was mispronounced like massively. Versus
most of them were.
What do you know about these two guys?
Not much about these two. So, yeah, I don't really know much outside of the mispronunciation of Olszewski so many times. It would kind of made my head spin a little bit.
Yeah, he's more commonly known as Steve O.
Yes.
And I think Buddy Wolf was married to Vivian Vachon at one time back.
Which is what I thought as well. And this would have been before she had passed away, because I think she passed away in 92, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was around there.
Yes. So
I was wondering, do you know if there was was there a regular ring announcer for Winnipeg?
Oh my goodness. I have to think in the 80s at this point.
Like, would it have been an AWA personality? Or would it have been a local guy?
No, I think in the 80s it was somebody local, and I don't remember who it was. Oh my goodness. I was just talking with Marty Goldstein about this a couple of weeks ago, and it's totally escaping me. Yeah, it wasn't an AWA personality, because at that point in time they were really relying on the local aspect of it, which is, obviously Tomko was a big part of that as well.
Yeah. Good. So what was your opinion of Greg Gagne before we hit his match?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that question. And when you sent me the card, this is obviously the four names on the top of the card is four individuals that I really, and obviously we'll get into the Super Destroyers aspect of it, but Greg Gagne is a very interesting individual in the professional wrestling lexicon, if you will, because you'll hear individuals like Cornette or Bischoff or whoever talk about, Greg Gagne was never a draw. He never mounted anything in the business. He never did anything. And some of that is self-inflicted by Greg himself, because in his later years, he's said some pretty outlandish things. Like he invented the NWO, and he's the reason why WCW was sold to Turner, and he's the reason why, but all of those are kind of irrelevant at this point. But he's an interesting character in Winnipeg, because for as much as everybody tries to say that he wasn't a draw and nobody cared about him in the States, people loved him here in Winnipeg, oddly enough. And there's another conversation that I actually had with Marty Goldstein, is like, he was over here.
Okay.
And it's interesting because I don't know if it's because he was Verne's son or not. I don't know if that's the specific reason, because there's a very long history between the Minneapolis office and Winnipeg, more specifically in Minnesota and Manitoba.
Yeah.
Right. This is something that it transcends wrestling. It's all types of sports. It's fishing. It's hunting. It's almost this. It goes past every cultural divide that or Manitoba more specifically, but Winnipeg in this instance, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. Well, that too. It's comparable weather, but it's comparable. It's almost like it's the same. It's the same feeling in between both for the people, right?
Okay.
Right. People down in Minneapolis and Minnesota are almost, they like the same things we do, right? Hunting, fishing, drinking, hockey, and they're wrestling, right? And the wrestling part is especially important when you trace footsteps of guys like Gordienko and all the YMCA guys that came from Winnipeg to train specifically in Minneapolis, get their feet wet, get out into the NWA. At that point, this is, well, obviously well before the AWA was really established. Yes. So there's a real deep history here. Suffice all that to say that there was a real affinity, in my opinion, and I didn't, this is a little bit before my time. I was born in 85, so we're predating me by 5 years on this card. Mm-hmm. I'm showing my age, I understand here, but there was a real affinity here for Verne Gagne especially. Like, he was really revered here. But Greg Gagne is somebody who had a lot of respect here and put on some tremendous matches. And I think if you would just listen to the American wrestling media side of it, you would think that he was just riding on the coattails of his dad. He never really did anything, and he has very outlandish ideas, which he does. I'm not saying he doesn't, but he really did mean something here in Winnipeg. And I really think that there was a big sense of community here that really enjoyed him. Whether or not it's specifically because of his dad doesn't really matter. Maybe it's the name or whatever, but he meant something here, and he was a draw here, believe it or not.
So it's interesting to see him on this card from 1980 going against the Winnipeg guy, Ricky Hunter.
Yes, which is interesting as well, because now you have somebody like Ricky Hunter from Winnipeg, and then you have the Gagne episode, right? So it's an interesting matchup for sure. Obviously, we know who was more over in this aspect of it. We do love our hometown heroes here, after all.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that he would be paired up in that matchup specifically.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of strange that, and I do have the results of this card. I just don't have the ad. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the ad. So, and Jesse has forgotten to send me the actual clipping that he had.
What a heel!
I know. Well, he's not on temporary assignment. He's been temporarily fired. But anyways, yeah. So I like Ricky Hunter, and he had a lot of different masked names over the years too, and he worked everywhere. I actually thought he was British until we did a card a few months ago, and I looked into it, and I was shocked that he was from Winnipeg. I didn't even know he was Canadian.
See, that's something that always seems to come up in my episodes of Grappling with Canada, because I'll do these episodes and there's so many tie-ins from these names over the years, right? A Kaniski episode will lead to 6 other names, and then I always get emails after the episode like, oh, I didn't know so and so was Canadian, or I didn't know so and so was from here, for example.
Yes.
So yeah, it is interesting that like you said, the more you research, the more there is to find, right? It's fascinating that way.
And yeah, I get stuck falling down the rabbit hole once a week, usually on Sunday evenings after I do the dishes, and that's right down the rabbit hole. $1,000 body slam contest. So Bravo is interesting here, as in he had basically ran away from Toronto to the AWA when he was the Canadian champion, and he showed up in the AWA as the AWA Canadian champion, or I think he was even trying to be billed as the British Empire champion for a bit. So, what do you think about Bravo and Blackwell? Your thoughts?
See, it's interesting because he would kind of do this same thing in the WWF about a decade later, right? He was doing the body slam challenge. Dino Bravo is somebody who I covered extensively in season 1, Grappling with Canada. So he's an interesting individual because he was so over he was Montreal's Hogan.
Yeah.
Right. And in Toronto, to a certain extent, he was big there. But in Western Canada, he wasn't as much of a name. And it's interesting to see him, like you said, he kind of like ran away with the title at one point. Like you said, I have to look at my notes, but how you're saying that he was the AWA British heavyweight title, that kind of something like that seems like this is this important time to me as well. But I got to look at my notes on that one. But a super talented character, somebody who we have a big Italian culture here, or big Italian portion of Winnipeg as well.
Yeah.
One of our radio personalities here, Joe Aiello, big Italian character. So
Okay.
It's interesting that he would be here at this time. He was still huge, not as
WWF huge.
not as gassed as he was in
yeah.
the WWF, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, he was big, not as big in Western Canada as he was in Eastern Canada, though, at this point in time.
The doing research for a story for WrestlePost recently, I found that the AWA did have they did use the British Empire Championship in a while, and it passed from Mosca to Billy Robinson in approximately 77, 78, and then probably just completely forgotten about. And then Dino shows up, and he was a really big star in Eastern Canada. And he got sent to travel. He got sent to the WWF in the early 70s. He got sent to the Mid-Atlantic to hone his skill, and he was pretty close to being a superstar as far as I'm concerned. I was never a big fan of Jerry Blackwell, other than watching him do drop kicks. That was about it.
He had a tremendous drop kick, though. You got to give him that.
He's a short guy too. It was pretty hard for him to get up there.
Yeah, well, especially against Bravo, because Bravo is no short stack himself.
Yeah, I'm sure if there was pictures of them, Blackwell drop kicking Bravo. You've seen pictures of guys drop kicking where the guys, instead of holding their hands back like this, are sort of helping them with their feet.
Yeah, just part of the magic.
Magic, yes, good word. So I'll let you talk about these two. This match, loser loses the mask, and Super Destroyer 2 versus Super Destroyer 3. Now we could hypothesize on who these two chaps are. I have a pretty good idea, but I didn't delve too deep down into these two guys. What do you think?
Okay, so this one is interesting, and you'll have to forgive me because I got to pull something up here. There's the joy of a computer screen in front of you, a phone beside you, then we
Yes.
have notes beside you. So Super Destroyer 2, I know who it is because it was actually a part of the results after the card. And maybe we can talk about that because you don't have that part of it. You don't have the results, right?
I have them on my phone. I don't have them printed out. No.
Okay, so maybe at the end of this, I can give the results
Yeah.
for everybody. I'll pull it up.
Sure.
So Destroyer 2, I can tell you who it is. Destroyer 3 is interesting because I think at this point in time, and now I got to switch to my other screen, I'm 95% certain that Destroyer 3 at this time was Neil Gay. And
Yes.
I'm not. Are you able to confirm that?
I would probably say so. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting when you start to get into the Super Destroyers 1, 2, 3. Then there's the Mach 1, 2, and 3s, and there's a whole lineage, and sometimes it it adds up, and sometimes it doesn't add up. So that's who I thought was number 3. So I'm glad I was on the right track for that one. Super Destroyer 2, who was unmasked in this match, which is why I know who it is, was, and I gotta pull this up here. Matthew Byerns. That's who it was.
Okay.
So that was interesting too, because you didn't see a whole, and he would go on like shortly after this to, I believe it was Mid-South.
Okay.
So it's we didn't see a whole lot of this kind of action happen in Winnipeg with unmaskings, right? We saw by action that's kind of maybe it's a misnomer. We saw all kinds of action here, right? Steel cage matches, whatever, but we never really got to see very many of these unmasking type situations, right? Where it was a big angle that it was more of an American style angle. I always thought myself,
Okay.
right? You would see it in Florida quite a bit. You would see it in AWA, not as much, but more in the southern states of AWA.
Georgia for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. Or in Texas as well.
Okay.
There was quite a bit of the unmasking, right? Here in Canada, I'm not sure that from everything that I've seen, we didn't really have a whole lot of these types of unmasking matches. It almost seemed like that was more of an American thing to unmask somebody.
The early 70s Dick Beyer, Dr. X, and Destroyer in Manitoba or AWA was an unmasking, but it was an unmasking because he was leaving. He was.
That's it. Yes. Yes.
So there was no continuing of the program, as in one guy gets unmasked, turns babyface, and comes back to be the new hero kind of thing.
Which that's like that's Florida to a T, right?
Yeah.
That's what they like the Midnight Rider, right?
Yeah.
Like that.
Some of those were so, yeah.
But
sometimes the gimmicks are so stupid, they're stupid. They're just plain stupid.
Well, yeah, sometimes they're there to be there, and sometimes it was just a guy under a mask, and they were just rotated throughout the and that's why. So that's why I wanted to clarify about who it was, because yeah, when you get into like, the Super Destroyer 1, 2, 3, then there's Mach 1, 2, 3. And so you have to go through the lineage. Okay, was it number 2 in this year? Okay, if that's the case, then it was Slaughter, for example. And if it wasn't, then it was. So yeah, it's very confusing.
So I've got for our next match, I've got some old magazines here. And there's Lord Alfred Hayes accuses Bobby Heenan as a little man with a big mouth. And that's from right around this time. And then we've got and some of the magazines. I can't believe I fell hook, line, and sinker for some of this stuff in the early '70s when I was a kid. But yeah, Bobby Heenan's fiendish plan to return to the AWA.
I love that.
He had a fiendish plan. It wasn't just like a plan. He wasn't just coming back. No, sir. And it, we'll post all this stuff up after on the view rolls with pictures and everything. I've got a great picture that I took of Jim Brunzell and Greg Gagne in front of Maple Leaf Gardens.
Oh,
back in the
nice.
day also.
Very nice.
So we're going to talk a little bit about Hayes versus Heenan, and that's I liked them both. I really did like them both. They were small guys, but they could both wrestle. And Heenan a little more comedy kind of thing, but and Heenan took awesome flips over the top rope, didn't he?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's interesting because like both great personalities in professional wrestling, right? Heenan is, I mean, if you twist my arm, it's like it's a 1 and 1A with him and Cornette are the best managers of all time. Heenan for me gets the nod a little bit for the physicality of the ring because oh my god, the covers I've seen of him on magazines and he's got the Crimson Mask and it's incredible. But he would put himself in the ring and put himself in such horrible positions and he wouldn't bump like a wrestler, which would obviously led to his later in life health issues, but like just what an incredible performer. And I don't mean that word in a pejorative sense or the way that they use it nowadays, right?
Yes.
Like he would just, my dad still talks about seeing that weasel Bobby Heenan always, right? Yeah. When it doesn't matter if he was the manager, if he was the mouthpiece, he would tell me about he would see the interviews on CKND when that was still stationed here in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Just somebody who sucked you into the building, right? And
yes,
I wish hey, if I was 5 years older and I could have been at this, well, I would have been a little bit older than that to actually enjoy it. But my goodness. And Alfred Hayes is interesting too, because I'm so used to his WWF work, right? Where he was the polished, the proper, the well-spoken, right? With the accent and all that. I never would have thought about him in the ring. But then you see a match like this where it's okay, it makes perfect sense. Like someone like him and someone like Heenan, it's like peanut butter and jelly. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think on the same card where I took the picture of Greg and Jim, I think Alfred Hayes was on that card in Toronto also. And he came up the ramp, and I was standing beside the ramp in Maple Leaf Gardens, and I think I looked up, and I do have a picture of that too, actually. I looked up, and I'm pretty sure I said, "Who the hell is that?"
Yeah.
A lot of these guys, when you see them 10 feet away live for the first time, it's shocking a little bit, right? And Heenan was when AWA was coming to Toronto in the late 70s. Heenan always came with Bockwinkel, so that was always cool to see him.
Yes,
absolutely. He never got involved, but he was always there, which was really, really cool. And you can't take away anything that he did at the announcers table in the WWE either, because that was, most people unfortunately only know him because of those things, right? But Heenan even wrestled in Ontario for the Wild Man, which was like most bizarre, right? When he was with the WWA in the Indianapolis circuit. So Heenan versus Hayes, I can only imagine what went on with that. And Alfred Hayes was so cool when international wrestling out of Montreal was dying, because he could speak French.
Yeah,
which was really cool. Most of the Americans couldn't even grasp it, so they had to have a French-speaking mouthpiece because they had to do both English and French promos, right?
That's right too. Yeah. See, I just one more thing I want to touch on before it's something you hit on there. how most people would picture Heenan in the WWE commentary section, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like my dad's generation, they never think about Heenan in that regard. They always think about Heenan as that weasel manager
Yeah.
here in Winnipeg, right? They like everybody and the Bockwinkel, like when he was managing Bockwinkel, people still talk about it, and that was, well, I'm 37. That was 40 plus 45 years ago,
Yeah.
right? People still talk about it because it made that much of an impact, and people still remember it.
He did, and it was a testament to the AWA. A lot of times they would put a manager with a wrestler, especially if he was a champion, that couldn't carry a conversation or couldn't do a promo.
Yes.
Both of those guys were promo up the yin yang. They could both. Nick could talk his way out of an
Oh my God, yes.
And Bobby Heenan was more of an interjecting kind of guy. Did you know Terrence Mashluck?
I didn't know him personally. I've seen him a few times on like shows, obviously before he passed away. But
Okay.
I saw him on a lot of the bar shows in CWE, and a couple of PCW shows. But I never got to meet him personally. I know him and Marty were real close.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about it because when I met him last summer, we went to a show together, and he was talking about how much he loved, and he is older than me, so he had grown up here watching only the AWA basically until it faltered, and then he had traveled basically in his wrestling life, loving Nick Bockwinkel from early days right through to the Heenan times, and then eventually winning the AWA championship. So he loved Nick Bockwinkel. He thought he was his favorite wrestler.
Well, he's not the only one. Yeah, Bockwinkel was like, here he was a god.
Yeah, and I watched I saw Nick wrestle I think 3 times in Toronto or 4 times, and they were a couple of one of the matches was a terrible match where he was going against Chief J Strongbow, which was mind blowing considering the AW champion from the Midwest and the Strongbow from the WWF at the time. And they did the fake leg injury after like 3 minutes, and it was brutal. Everyone hated it.
Yeah, they're never gonna switch those. It sucks for the fans, eh?
Yeah,
That's the classic wrestling bait and switch right there.
and I just couldn't imagine. I remember sitting there thinking, but he came all the way from Minneapolis for a 4-minute match. What the hell? Not knowing that they get paid no matter if it's 40 minutes or 4 minutes, right? And
Yeah, but okay, so that's interesting. And I'm sort of sidebar here for a minute.
oh,
So when we always think about matches like that in a vacuum, right? Like that match happened, how terrible it would have been. I won't use language because that I don't use it on my show either. So
it was shit.
But
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to see how much it impacted the cards after the fact, right? Because you always hear about the shows, especially in Canadian cities, when they don't deliver, how much it impacts shows late,
Yes.
especially here in Winnipeg. Because, oh my God, when you go through the list of AWA shows that drew and the ones that didn't, and there's reasons for it, right? So it would be interesting to see how that show specifically impacted the next ones, because the Canadian market is it's a lot different than the American market. American markets where it was weekly, it was on a clock, you showed up, that was your Tuesday night, or that was your Monday night, or that was your whatever, right? In Canada, if you didn't deliver, you were burnt toast by the time you're coming back the next time around.
And the thing about that point is that in Toronto, it was a completely different ball of wax, because at the time they were doing AWA, NWA, and WWF. All
That's right.
So
Yep.
I can't remember right off the top of my head, but I mean, the next match after that might have been Flair and Snuka. So yeah, like who cares if Strongbow and Bockwinkel sucked? We got to see Nick Bockwinkel. He had the belt. It was really cool to see him live. We were only here to see Ric Flair, right, in Snuka. So
Okay,
I
so that's
can't
interesting
remember
too.
what the next match was, but I know that wasn't the finale for sure of the night.
Yeah, okay. So that changes a little bit
Yeah,
of the formula as well, but regardless, right? Are you if you see Strongbow go down with an injury in 3 minutes, are you gonna go see him again? Probably not.
yeah,
Right? Once that's the one thing about the Canadian crowd as well, right? If they sour on you, that's it.
yeah. And in we've talked many times on our podcast about how Ric Flair owned Toronto so much, and he could do anything he wanted. But on the same note, if he, I don't think he never no showed. I'm pretty sure he always showed up. But some of the guys, by whatever reason, no showed, and that really hurt the market.
Yes,
When
absolutely.
a big name wouldn't show. I went to a card to see superstar Billy Graham just to see him. That's the only reason why I bought a ticket. And yeah, he no showed because of a leg injury, and it's like I, I never had the chance to go see him again. And he came back to Toronto, I think 2 or 3 more times. He lost the belt and never came back again. So that kind of sucks. Yeah. Snowblower going by there or something.
No, just my dog.
um, So let's hit the main event, and this is a big one. You got 4 great stars here, 2 call them younger guys who the trajectory was only going up, and 2 guys who by 1980 the trajectory was only going down, but they paid their dues. Verne and Mad Dog Maurice Vachon versus Jesse Ventura and Adrian Adonis. What? Tell me about your thoughts about Ventura and Adonis.
Okay, so first off, I want to know who you think's trajectory is going down at this point, because I'm interested about that part of it.
Definitely Vern and Mad Dog. I mean,
Okay.
yeah,
Yes, and this is
it was
when.
rocketing down for those guys.
Oh, yes, it was. And Vern, a lot of that was self-inflicted at this
Yeah,
point, right? I think we can, and that's not to say it disrespectfully, but
no,
you can only book yourself as the champion in your promotion so many times before it's stale, right?
yeah,
And even here in Winnipeg, where he had, I'm telling you, and whoever is listening to this, like if you don't live in the Winnipeg or the province of Manitoba, you won't understand. But there was a, a groundswell of support for Verne Gagne, for the AWA here for a long time, a lot longer than there should have been, to be completely honest. And yeah, even that kind of started to run its course when it's the same thing consistently over and over,
yeah,
and Verne is always the guy on top, right? It didn't matter who was in the promotion. Mad Dog, he was loved here. Actually, I think actually you posted it. There's some tremendous commercials featuring Mad Dog Vachon that were recorded here in Winnipeg. There were, or maybe you didn't record
no,
those. Okay, so I gotta find them and maybe I'll repost them in. I'll see if I can repost them in your Facebook group.
okay,
But there were some car commercials that Mad Dog would have done. Maybe it was around this time, or maybe it was late 70s, one of the two. But
okay,
it just tremendous stuff. And there was also a lot of newspaper ads where it would be like Mad Dog Vachon takes a bite out of prices or things like that. Just
yeah,
great stuff, right? Like he was just such a fixture in this territory. And it's interesting too because here in Winnipeg we have also a very large French Canadian contingent. So he was loved here, and and plus he was crazy. So
yes.
that really helped his case for us here in Winnipeg because we're a strange breed here. I'm gonna say that. It's an apt description.
The as much as he was loved at this time, he was hated just as much when he was the AWA champion back in the 60s.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's I don't know if you've seen a fantastic video of him and Crusher in a TV match when Crusher accidentally kicks him while he's blading, and it's just a shit show. Like, it's like someone's pouring a can of red paint on his head, and it's just brutal. But it gets him over like massive, right? He was so hated, and you know, him and his brother having the AWA tag team titles for so long, and then him holding the AWA singles titles for so long. Vachon's amassed a massive time holding belts in the AWA.
Oh, absolutely.
They were huge stars before they went back to Montreal and started Grand Prix.
It's interesting because, like, so obviously they're huge in Montreal. Like, that is kind of without saying, but they were a weird breed of wrestler because they kind of got over everywhere they went, right? They were huge here. They were huge in Minneapolis. In Texas, they were really big actually as well. And actually, funny enough, before he passed, this was years before he passed away, but I had interviewed Billy Two Rivers for an episode on season 1. And he was saying that he actually had a tag match against the Vachon brothers in Texas. So you figure, like, here's 4 people from Quebec. You would have had the Vachon brothers, Billy Two Rivers, and Chief Don Eagle in Texas.
Yeah.
And that was a headliner. Figure that one out.
Strange, right?
Very strange.
Four guys from basically in a 10-mile square area, all from the same area.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just great stuff.
Yeah.
The other tag team the other partners of the other tag team is interesting too. I love Jesse Ventura. I know a lot of people don't like him. I love his wrestling. I love his personality. I love his commentary. I'm one of the minority. I understand, but everything about Jesse Ventura. I even love his goddamn movies, but yeah, I love Jesse Ventura. I can't say enough good things about him.
I never saw him live, but he wasn't, to me, a big much of anything.
Mm-hmm.
But as a tag team, these guys were awesome. We
Absolutely.
We got to see the AWA on TV in Ontario, Southern Ontario at this time, so they were front and center. The East-West connection, and Adonis was just amazing talent in the ring, whether he was 245 or whether he was 345, I think, pounds, that is.
Yes. And it didn't matter what he played or what his a word I hate using, but it's kind of apt nowadays, is his character. Whatever he was playing in the ring, right? He made you believe, right?
Yeah.
That's the big thing. So say what you will about the 4 guys. I take your point about Jesse Ventura, right? There's a lot of, he's a very polarizing character, but you can believe that when he's doing what he's doing, you believe that that's who he is, right?
Oh, for sure.
The other 3 guys in the ring, right? Mad Dog, you believe he's nuts, he's crazy, right? Verne Gagne, you believe he's a badass, he'll kick your ass, right? And then Adonis, right? Like, there's 4 guys in a ring that can make you feel, right? And that's regardless of technical skill, or which they did have, know, Ventura not as much, clearly, but whether it's showmanship, whether it's whatever, they knew how to engage people, right? And they all 4 individuals in that main event knew how to make you believe that what was happening in the ring was happening. Maybe wrestling is fake, but you believed them when they stepped in the ring.
Complete professionals.
Absolutely.
And yes, maybe, in my opinion, Ventura wasn't that much of a star, but what he turned into was phenomenal. I will never take
Yes.
that away from him. His talent when he couldn't work anymore was on the mic was fantastic. He turned into another person practically.
Yes,
And
absolutely. That's perfect. Yeah.
celebrity and just everything other than a wrestler. And it was bizarre to see how well he did, and then after wrestling career, how well he managed his life, and he stayed away from a lot of the shit show of some of the guys that can't control their lives or whatever after the fact, right?
Well, you're absolutely correct because you look at him now and yeah, he's a little eccentric and he has his picadillos, with the whole conspiracy theory thing, whatever. But regardless of that, what would he be now? Would he be late 70s, I think, at this point?
It's got to be like I would say, yeah, 76, 78.
Yeah, without throwing in the Google machine, I'm gonna guess is he's in and around there. Still looks pretty spry for like I see him on TV every once in a while. And still is his mind. And that's the big thing
Yeah.
about wrestling, right? It's a shame. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna go off on a little tangent here, and I apologize, but um, Evan Ginsberg just put out an article about Butcher Vachon because he's losing his like he's losing his memory, right?
I
And
did read it, yes.
oh, you read it?
Yeah.
Okay, so for anybody who's maybe listening to this and is not familiar, Evan Ginsberg writes for ProWrestlingStories.com. He wrote an article on Butcher Vachon because he's going through is it early dementia? I believe is
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he can't remember like anything from his wrestling past, but he's enjoying the stories of what he did in the ring because he has no idea. Like he doesn't know.
People are sending him faxes and emails and Facebook posts telling him, "Oh, I remember when you did this, and I remember when you did that." Yeah.
Absolutely. And so it's a shame when you hear of guys like that, guys who, I'm not saying that he abused his body, but guys who left us a lot younger than that
Yeah.
really abused their body, and some of them we still see today. And Ric Flair is a prime example, right? And you're like, what is happening here? But then you see a guy like Jesse Ventura who, like you said, pretty well reinvented himself after getting out of the ring, right?
Yeah.
But still has it up here, and can carry it, right? There's guys. Cowboy Dan Crawford out of Calgary is another
Yeah.
one. I talk to him often, and he still got it, right. He there are a lot of guys from that era who took care of themselves, and they can just still tell you the stories, right, and keep the memory alive, if you will. But it's boy, it's a shame when you can't get the firsthand experience or firsthand knowledge.
The something that I'm going to go on an Eddie Mansfield tangent here, and
Please
yeah,
do.
that's because there's no real proper anything, and I'm going way out here.
Okay, please do. Yeah, let's do
I'm a
it.
complete anti-union person. And if you're self-employed, suck it up, figure it out. I've been self-employed for like 35 years. If I didn't like what I was doing, I went and played in someone else's sandbox. And professional wrestling was pretty much the same.
Yes.
If you weren't a star that had the power to be somewhere and hold on to it. So, anyways, so many guys have been dropped on their heads over and over and over. We have no idea how many concussions some of these guys have had. And yeah, scrambled to a certain extent and using outside means to stay cohesive and falling even further because of drug use or whatever, right? Yeah, that's my Eddie Mansfield tangent. I don't agree with him at all, but I agree with him in the point that Yeah, guess what? The promoters are the bosses and they make the money, and that's the way it is.
It's funny because the most I've ever heard of Mansfield is really from Cornette, because
Mhm.
because nobody really talks about him, and maybe it's because he was so outspoken and he'll just tell you the way it is, right? He never sugarcoated
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. And I've talked with him, and we were going to have him on our show, and we just haven't connected yet, and that's fine. And I only wanted to talk to him because he worked in Ontario. That's all. I don't want to talk about any what you think is right or what you think is wrong about something that never happened, or whether you
Mhm.
bladed yourself on TV. Who cares? Lots of people have exposed the business, and sometimes just going to the wrestling match just exposes the business, right?
Well, go through
Oh
on
my God, look at that move that guy just did. He completely, oh,
yeah, go throw on TSN at about 8 o'clock on a Wednesday till about 10 o'clock, and I think you'll understand what exposing the business is. But Adrian Adonis is somebody who I wanted to talk to you about because
yeah.
obviously there's a big connection there. So, um, just what were your thoughts about Adonis? Just generally speaking about his career.
Fantastic. He was one of those guys for me. He could dress in pink for the rest of his days. I don't give a crap what he does. I don't care. I just don't care. He took
I loved that, by the way.
when he took that stuff off, and like I said, whether he was 245 or he was 340 or 445, because he got a little
He
rotund
got
there.
he got big, yeah.
He could still do beautiful arm drags, like picture perfect arm drags. It was just a treat, such a treat. And they said that when the Wild Man went to Newfoundland on the final tour, and the Mike Pat Kelly and Adrian and the Wild Man died, that the Wild Man was going to be bringing most of the troop back to Ontario because he would have made enough money to start up working with Al Tomko in BC, and they were going to put a TV show
Ooh,
together, and
very interesting.
that would have brought Adrian Adonis back on the limelight again. Now that was just a rumor that one of the Wild Man's former wrestlers told me, but it could have been something that could have happened. Tomko was still kicking, holding on for his last breath out in BC, so it could have happened.
See, I'm going to telegraph a little bit, and we're going to have a conversation off air about an upcoming episode of Grappling with Canada, which may or may not coincide with a certain anniversary that's coming up in a certain month of the year, if you will. So,
Okay.
but we'll have that conversation after the fact.
Okay.
But yeah, I agree with Adonis is just what a treat, right? Like it didn't matter the frilly Adonis or however
Mhm.
there's a different F word that people use. I'm not going to say it now because it's whatever, right? But my God, talk about somebody who can make you believe, right? Uh, I just I loved everything he did in the ring. He just what a like you said, didn't matter if he was 240, 340, or 440, right? He still delivered, and it just what a character. Like, and I don't mean that word pejoratively, but just what a great wrestling personality. Maybe that's the proper way to say it.
Yeah. When you think some guys, then we could probably, if we thought about it, we could probably pull a couple out of the hat. Um, Here's a wrestler, and he's really, really good. And over here, they put a pink cowboy hat on him. And over here, they put a weasel suit on him. And over here, they do something else. And they make him grow a mustache and a beard, and they make him into a Russian, shave his head. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The point
Yeah,
is that no matter what they put on him, he's going to be a great
yeah,
wrestler.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But you said you have the results. Do you want to run down the results
Yeah,
quickly?
so I'll run the results, and I want to talk about the attendance too, because this is I find it interesting to discuss that aspect of it as well. So I'll run down the card quick, or run down the results quick.
Yeah.
Um, so Vachon and Verne Gagne were disqualified after Vachon used a metal chair or a steel chair in the end of the match. So that's not a big surprise there.
Yes.
I believe it ended up setting up a match later between Bockwinkel and was somebody else like a few months after this, but there was a cage match like
Crusher and
after this.
Bockwinkel.
Okay, so that was a cage match after this match or after this card. So okay, so what do we else do we have here? We have Blackwell sent Bravo to the dressing room on a stretcher. We've seen that before. This would have been, if you would look at 92 WWF, they ran a similar angle when Earthquake sent Bravo to the back on a stretcher. We would have had in the Super Destroyers match. I kind of spoiled this one earlier. I'm sorry, folks.
No, that's fine.
Super Destroyer 3 beat Super Destroyer 2, who was unmasked as Matthew Byron. Now he would have to wrestle without his mask in the upcoming matches. And then he actually came to interfere in the Bobby Heenan match and helped Heenan beat Lord Alfred Hayes. So that's kind of interesting as well. And then I didn't have a finish for... Oh, yeah, we do. Okay, so Greg Gagne beat Ricky Hunter. And then Buddy Wolf and Oslowski went to a draw, which is interesting in an opening match that they would go to a draw.
Yeah, and
it's interesting.
In Toronto, either the first or second match always went to a 20-minute draw.
Yeah. Here was not as common.
Okay.
And and I say that now, and I can already hear Marty barking in my head about you're wrong. There was this, but from everything that I can remember, most matches in Winnipeg did not go to a draw. There was usually a finish, even if it was a DQ.
Okay. I've been doing a little bit of Ric Flair early AWA research, and he was in the openers a lot.
Okay, well, yeah, but Flair is an interesting.
Quite a few years,
and he had quite a few here in Winnipeg as well. The other thing that I wanted to say was the attendance. So the attendance was 6,216 fans, which is a pretty good house in the old barn. Now, this would have been after they expanded the Winnipeg Arena. So from the time it opened in 52 until 79, it held just shy of 10,000. That was the seating arrangement.
Okay.
And then when the Jets were joining the NHL, they did the addition, and so the addition would have started in 1980. So because this match happened in 1980, I have to believe that the addition was finished at that point.
Okay.
Or was nearing completion, so they may not have had the whole arena available. But 6,000 in Winnipeg on a what night of the week was this? This was on a
Wednesday,
on a Thursday night. Yeah, and that's a tough night in Winnipeg, at least to draw for things. Weekends are that's your prime. Like by weekend, I mean Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
But yeah, 6,000's a tremendous crowd here in Winnipeg, especially when you hear some of the crowds that they had in the late 80s towards the dying days of the AWA when they're drawing 800 people.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and there were some brutal cards here later in the days of the AWA, but this is before the big separation happened, before we started getting WWF cards here. And also before the NWA really made a conceited effort to try and run here.
Yeah.
So you have kind of that, and again, it's Verne, and there's a big history there as well.
If you had been a subscriber to Terrence's Bulletin Canadian Championship Wrestling, we were all enthralled by the NWA coming to Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and sometimes the cards were great and worked out, and sometimes they were duds, which is, par for the course, and things don't work out or people don't show up and what have you, right?
But it's crazy. You look at some of those NWA cards, and there's Dusty, and there's Flair, and there's Ronnie Garvin or whoever, right? Like it's
Backlund and Iron Sheik and
absolutely, yeah. But they had some interesting choices of venues, and I'm not sure if that's because, and this is conjecture, and I may be totally wrong, but I have a feeling that at that time Tomco had the rights to run the Winnipeg Arena exclusively, and I think it was a 30-day window is what it was.
Okay.
So when he would run an event, there couldn't be another wrestling event in the Winnipeg Arena for 30 days after that, which is why you would continually see, within a month, there'd be a follow-up here, almost regardless of who was on the card, right? And that later on would lead to some of the low drawing cards when we would get some subpar matches, which would then affect attendance, further on down the line. And I mean, we get into that weeds, but from my understanding, it was a 30-day window, and that's what he being Al Tomko had here in Winnipeg for the AWA when he was promoting for Verne.
Yeah, and on our National Wrestling Clippings Alliance homepage, I've been posting a lot of Winnipeg results and clippings and ads, and it's interesting to see the transformation of Al from the Madison Club to being the boss kind of here. It's really cool.
It's weird, and I don't want to get too homer about it because obviously I live here in Winnipeg. And for that reason, I've kind of tried to stay away from it on the Grappling with Canada program. Obviously, I did the Gordienko episode, but for the most part, I've stayed away from Winnipeg because there's so much here, and it would be so easy to fall into the rabbit hole and just deep dive on the Tomcos, on the Candelos, on the, even going further back in time when there was conspiracy around the Jack Taylor situations, when there was the McCready situation, when there's so much racketeering and nonsense and blah 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 here in little old Winnipeg. Like it's certainly interesting.
And it's now a major city, excuse me, with stops that include obviously AEW recently and WWF Raw and different shows coming in here. Where back in the 70s, yes, it's a big city still, but it wasn't like a metropolis like Minneapolis or Toronto or Montreal.
Oh God, no.
And Toronto, no matter what, I mean, they could have a bummer show, and then 2 weeks later, the place would still sell out.
Well, and the other thing is to think about the populations, right?
Yeah.
So for example, here in 1980, for as big and as central as a city of Winnipeg was, we only had 580,000 people who lived here.
Yeah.
If you would go back to, and we essentially only had a population growth of 1,000 or 2,000 people from the 70s to the 80s. So
wow,
it's stagnant, right?
Yeah.
We were on par, and we're on a whole other tangent now. I apologize, folks, but now I'm in the weeds. So we were on par with Calgary and with Edmonton for a long time in terms of population growth, in terms of city expansion, city services, all that stuff until about the 60s. Then it changed. There's a lot of reasons why it happened here in Winnipeg. A lot of it was crooked bureaucracy. I'm not going to do the whole politics thing here, but that's what happened. And then we had a stagnant population. But it's interesting because some of the largest drawing cards outside of Toronto and Montreal, because Montreal is crazy for wrestling, were here in Winnipeg, right? And we were consistently, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 monthly here, whereas opposed to, Calgary, you would think automatically Stampede, oh, they're drawing huge. Well, they're doing cards of, 2, 3, 4,000.
Yeah, they had a tiny arena.
Yes, but a larger population. So it's a little misleading because, especially now, right now, like Winnipeg, I think it's like 780, and Edmonton and Calgary, I think they're like 1 million each or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Toronto is like crazy, right? But yeah, so AEW was here. I think they pretty well sold the place out. It was pretty close anyways to a sellout here. Raw did well. Or SmackDown, sorry, was here not too long ago, did very
Right.
well. Raw's coming back as well. So the market's here, regardless of the population size.
Mhm.
Toronto is like, it's still almost an automatic. It's going to do well, right?
Yeah.
Out west but yeah, Winnipeg's is an interesting beast, if you will.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for coming on, co-hosting with us today. And I really enjoy talking history with you because you do the deepest dives that I've heard of in a long, long time, which is really cool. and Grappling with Canada is a fantastic resource to start checking into some really interesting things. We're just at the NWCA here, we're just covering cards. We're covering small little tidbits of what we do, and you are diving deep, and it's a pleasure to watch your episodes and a testament to your knowledge and your research.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's very different than anything else out there, and which is why the episodes take me quite a while to do.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? It's very rewarding when I get emails from friends or family of the people. Actually, I have a phone call tomorrow. I got to get in touch with somebody who's a relative of Billy Two Rivers, who
Okay.
just reached out to me. But yeah, you know what? It's worthwhile, and these are people who have left a mark on not just wrestling, but they've left a mark on Canada.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize a lot of the things that we have today in terms of how people put themselves out there socially, or some of the TV programs that we have, or some of the cultural touchstones that we have, are specifically because of these professional wrestlers, and they don't understand that. So it's my pleasure to at least impart that little bit of knowledge on everybody else, and put it out there for not just Canada but the world. I always find it interesting that our audience is I think we're listened to in over 75 countries worldwide, which is incredible to me. And but the listenership in Canada is a very small portion of that, which I find fascinating. But I put it out there, and hopefully people will understand a little bit more about the individuals who help shape this country, and that's all I can ask.
That's more than anyone can ask. Yes. I thank you very much again, and I'm going to sign off here, but we're going to talk about quickly. I'm going to mention our 5 Facebook groups now. We have the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance main page. The National Wrestling Clippings Alliance presents the Ric Flair tribute page and the BC tribute page, and of course the Wildman page and the Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past page. And don't forget, subscribe, help us out, help Andy out, help Jesse out, help us all out here. And we can't forget Johnny, our editor, who is working behind the scenes always to put all this stuff together for me. So that's it for me, Wes and Andy. Thank you very much again. And we'll talk soon, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Wes.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Wes.
We are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. It's the NWCA podcast.
I love doing this, and I love you in a cool wrestling history kind of way.
Hey, easy, man.